يوم الدين. القول مني في جميع الأشياء قول آل محمد فيما أسر وما أعلن وفيما بلغني عنهم وفيما لم يبلغني. أما بعد، فقد قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. An experiment that was conducted by psychologists, more specifically Solomon Asch. This experiment, which was conducted, wanted to test that would the human change his perspective of objective truth as a result of the people that are around him. So the experiment was as follows. What Ash would do is he would get one person into a group. So let's say a group of 8, you add one person, that's 9 people. The 8 people that were already in the group were actors, or what's known as confederates. These actors knew what the experiment was about and were already prepared for what is to come. The 9th person does not know what's going to happen. What the experiment is that in a group, they will present to them 3 lines. Line A, line B, and line C. Line B would be much larger or longer than the other 2 lines. However, what would happen is the first 8 actors were told to say that the other lines were bigger, even though lines A and C were significantly smaller. And then the 9th person was to decide which line is the biggest line. So this is something that is fairly simple and straightforward. You see that one line is bigger than the other and you say that this line is bigger. However, what the experiment found is that around 40% of the people in the experiment, because of the 8 people before them that said the other lines were bigger, they conformed and they said that the other lines were bigger, even though it was very obvious which line was bigger. But because of the people around them saying that the other lines were bigger, they agreed. So it goes to show you that us as humans, we're known as social animals. And there is this thing that develops at a very young age called social referencing. We base our emotions based off of what other people are doing or how other people are reacting. So when we social reference, even to the degree that we are willing to let go of something that is so obviously the truth, like something that your eyes can see, we are willing to let go of because of conformity. How much of our lives is based off of conformity? How much of our lives is based off of following the majority and being part of the majority? Because that's what the human wants. It is very threatening for a human to be part of the minority. If you were to look at it from what they call the evolutionary standpoint, where they say the hunter-gatherer humans, they want this. This is something instinctual, because if they are part of the minority, they are less likely to survive out in the wild or when they would hunt. So being part of the minority is something that is very threatening and very difficult for the human to go through. So they would do anything. They are willing to do anything in order to conform. Here's where it becomes dangerous. How much of us are conforming to the life that we live in terms of belief, in terms of faith? Do we believe in what we believe in because we are surrounded by people that believe in the same thing? And then the questions arise. Why are we a minority? Why are they a majority? And we hold it as evidence because of our instincts, because of our human need to conform. We use majority and minority as a scale for truth. When we see the others are a majority, we say maybe they're right, maybe we're wrong. However, the Quran has made sure to tackle that issue and to show us that scaling by numbers is an incorrect way to measure what is right and what is wrong. Let's look at some of the examples from the Quran very quickly. One of the verses, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَإِن تُطِعْ أَكْثَرْ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّوكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. You want to follow the majority? You want to follow most of the people? What does this verse say? It says that if you were to obey most of those on earth, they would lead you away from Allah's path. If you want to follow the majority, most of those on earth would lead you away from Allah, not closer to Allah. And then you look at the examples of history. These aren't just stories. These are lessons by which we live. Nuh, how many years was he preaching to his people the message of La ilaha illallah? 950 years. By the end of these 950 years, how many people were with Nuh? There are differences in narrations, but none of the narrations put a number above 100 people. So if you were to go and say hypothetically there were 95 people, so Nuh every 10 years would guide one person. 950 years, and then you have 95 people that were with him at the end. Every 10 years Nuh would guide one person would join him if you were to spread it out into that number. And what does the verse say? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَمَا آمَنَ مَعَهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ. Nuh, very little people were believing and were with him. Then you have the army of Talut when they were going to face Goliath and they reached the river. What happened? Whoever drinks from the river would not be able to join us. Most of them drank. Only the minority did not drink. What does the verse say? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. فَشَرِبُوا مِنْهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِنْهُمْ. Most of them drank from the water, except a minority, which was how much? 313. And then it tells you that even in warfare, the scale of majority and minority doesn't fit. In that same verse, it says, كَم مِّن فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرَةً بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. How many times has a small force vanquished a mighty army with the permission of Allah? So this idea that we scale and we measure the truth by numbers is false. Even on the other side, the flip side, which is, the minority, because something is a minority, it's true. No, that's not true either. There are very small amounts of Islamic sects which no one agrees with and no one adopts. Doesn't mean that they're right because they are a minority. Let's not get it twisted. But the Quran is telling us that the scale by which we measure truth is never to be in numbers. It is to be in what? In quality, in observing the truth itself. As the Ahlul Bayt would say, as Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam would say, follow the truth, you will find its people. Don't look for numbers, don't look for majority, don't look for minority. Let this never be a scale, because you have some of the shabab, they ask, why are we a minority in this community? Or in terms of the other Muslims, why are the Shia a minority? What's the problem with us being a minority? The Quran is riddled, is filled with the stories of those who became etched in history. They were a minority. The army of Talut was a minority. Those who survived with Nuh were a minority. Those who were with the Holy Prophet Muhammad, in the beginning years, were a minority. So this is not a scale by which we measure. And something which is even more focused on this point is the idea of following the successors of Allah, the representatives of Allah. Look at what happened after the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. And the verse is very obvious. When we read the verse, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ أَفَإِنْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلْ انقلبتم على أعقابكم ومن ينقلب على عقبيه لن يضر الله شيئا وسيجزي الله الشاكرين. Okay. Muhammad is but a prophet of Allah. If he was to die or be killed, surely you will regress into disbelief. See, the hypothetical here isn't on the regression. The inqilab is certain. The hypothetical was, أَفَإِنْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلْ. But the certainty is in the regression. أَفَإِنْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلَ انقلبتم على أعقابكم. After the Prophet's death or martyrdom, surely you will regress into disbelief. This is a sunnah that has happened previously. Look at Musa when he left his people for 40 days. What happened? The inqilab happened. They were worshipping the what? The golden calf. And they were deviated by who? The Samiri. This is something that was certain. But look at the art of the Quran. وَمَنْ يَنْقَلِبْ عَلَىٰ عَقِبَيْهِ لَنْ يَضُرَّ اللَّهَ شَيْئًا وَسَيَجْزِي اللَّهُ الشَّاكِرِينَ. Why did Allah say وَسَيَجْزِي اللَّهَ الشَّاكِرِينَ? He said, whoever regresses into disbelief, لَنْ يَضُرَّ اللَّهَ شَيْئًا. Everyone will regress into disbelief, but he gave a caveat here. وَسَيَجْزِي اللَّهَ الشَّاكِرِينَ. That means what? The Shakirin won't regress. And what's the description of the Shakirin in the Quran? وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ. Those who are thankful are the minority. وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ. So that means after the death of the Holy Prophet, very few people will regress into disbelief. And those are the thankful ones. Those are the ones that hold on to the wilayah of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And we read the regression after the death of the Holy Prophet, the Saqifa, the fight for power, the attack on Sayyidah Zahra's house. This was all very obvious. And Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he has a hadith that is very dangerous in its own right, where the Imam alayhi salam, he says that إن رسول الله لما قبض صار الناس كلهم أهل جاهلية إلا أربعة علي والمقداد وسلمان وأبو ذر. After the death of the Holy Prophet, everyone regressed except Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, al-Miqdad, Salman and Abu Dhar. These are the people that had no doubt, that not for a millisecond skewed out of the correct path. Look at the minority. 4 people? Really? 4 people after the death of the Holy Prophet? What happened to the majority? What happened to following the majority, and that the majority, surely we must conform and be part of them, and we have to be part? That's not the qiyas. That's not the measure by which we find the truth. So you see, after the Prophet, very few people hold on to the concept of imamat. And Du'a al-Nudba puts it beautifully when it comes to describing the idea of the majority and the minority. What does it say? وَالْأُمَّةُ مُصِرَّةٌ عَلَى مَقْتِهِ مُجْتَمِعَةٌ عَلى قَطِيعَةِ رَحِمِهِ وَإِقْصَاءِ وِلْدِهِ إِلَّا الْقَلِيلَ مِمَّنْ وَفَى لِرِعَايَةِ الْحَقِّ فِيهِمْ. That the nation were united, were insistent on detesting Amir al-Mu'mineen, united in ending his lineage, Al-Hasan al-Hussein, except the very few who held on to their rights and observed their rights when it came to the Ahl al-Bayt. So we have to observe this as well. And we ask Allah that we be of these people that observe the rights of the Imam of our time and hold on to this relationship with the Imam of our time, lest we want to be like the majority and we hold on to the truth, even if it means being the minority, even if it means being إِلَّا الْقَلِيلَ مِمَّنْ وَفَى لِرِعَايَةِ الْحَقِّ فِيهِمْ. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج والعافية والنصر واجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه ومن شيعته ومحبيه وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
أحسن. طيب الله أنفاسك، رحمة الله عليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أحبتي، قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: من أحب ابنتي فاطمة فهو في الجنة معي. إن شاء الله يوم الأربعاء القادم ستقام احتفالا بهيجا بمناسبة ذكرى ميلاد سيدتنا ومولاتنا فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها. أرجو من المؤمنين والمؤمنات لا يقصرون في دفعات أموالهم لإحياء هذه احتفال. رحم الله والديكم. على محبة أمير المؤمنين صلوا على محمد